Hey everybody, it's a Mad Master here just to wish you a happy Saturnalia and happy solstice. But I'm also doing a video as well. And happy Kwanzaa as well. I'm not going to celebrate Christmas because that's part of the heteronormative patriarchal construct of reality or whatever. No, I'm just fucking around. I don't really care about this. I don't really care about holidays that much. But thought I'd wish the original pagan holiday that Christmas was based on, which maybe it's various ones. But anyways, this video is about generations and labels, which I really don't like to use because I hate this whole thing, millennials versus this or versus that. I really don't like to, just as a disclaimer, I really hate those labels and stuff. But nevertheless, this video is called The Shocking Truth About Baby Boomer Hypocrisy. So it's primarily targeted at people, including some family members who are baby boomers and participated in much of the counterculture of the 60s. But yet, they chose to criticize, demean, and belittle me for my voting choices last election. And almost also some of them, and this is more than one person that I've spoken with or heard from or seen say this kind of stuff. They also simultaneously supported Hillary Clinton almost to like a cult-like degree. I mean, there's a Trump cult as well, I won't lie. And I think that this video could also maybe correlate, its parallel with some of my Rock is Dying videos, as I'll mention later in my Rock is Dying videos, which I'm going to do more of, even though the first one I'm not totally happy with. But so I know baby boomers are a big target for millennials, and then vice versa. The boomers themselves criticize millennials or Gen Xers or Xennials, is whatever the fuck that's where the little subcategory that I would be in, maybe according to some. But when they criticize a lot of them for being really supportive of Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein or whoever, they're missing the whole point. A lot of them, anyways, of what they once stood for. And you saw this a lot in the last election when people who legitimately wanted government change instead of gradualism or compromise, and with these corporate. So, like, for example, oh yeah, well, we were, I've heard some of them say we were too idealistic. So, okay, so Hillary's whole thing with the corporations and the banking elites and the military-industrial complex, that's all fine now, even though you used to rally against it, literally. So anybody that was talking about that, they were talked down to for daring to support candidates that went off that script of we have to still compromise with those entities or get lobbying by them or money from them. So anybody that went off script, I'm not talking about Trump, I'm talking about Bernie Sanders particularly, because I know Trump went off script, but it was more of a calculated thing to seem like he was anti-establishment, but just to sucker people in. So this culminated in people like me exercising our democratic choice and right and freedom to vote for who we want, but while being disgraced by many in the establishment for also daring to vote third party. And it's taken a while to do a video like this, but at this juncture, what has prompted me to do this is the fact that I've been kind of fascinated by the 60s counterculture things as of late. And it started with me like listening to more of the Doors again. Like I one of my favorite bands from years back, but I was starting to listen to the Doors, watching some documentaries. I saw like I saw a movie at a friend's house, Good Morning Vietnam, and I was just like looking at stuff like Vietnam. I've been watching a lot of Vietnam War movies and stuff. So I also watched two documentaries. One is called Hearts and Minds. It's free on YouTube if you can find it. And also The War at Home. So one epiphany I've had while watching these documentaries is the idea that many criticisms leveled at me for my voting choices could easily have been leveled at many of the subjects of these documentaries as well, or particularly for people, or the people that I've known or family members or whoever who have actually were in the Chicago 8 protests, or Democrat, voted or protesting against the Democratic establishment back then, the Democratic National Convention protests in 1968. That's not only hypocrisy, but it's just a testament to a betrayal of the ideas that they once had, in my opinion. So it'd be one thing to say that Hillary was the better choice versus Trump, and some people said that, and they might have a point there. But to act like some of these people acted like they were always lockstep with these ideas of the establishment, and I think that's highly disingenuous. So let's look at some examples of language that they use in the War at Home documentary, which is about Madison, actually, where I live. I just doxed myself. Oh no, I don't give a fuck. Anyways, so I use these terms with certain people that were totally on board with a lot of these protests and stuff, and probably have read books about some of this stuff in the past. I'm willing to bet. So I use these terms like military-industrial complex and other words to talk about my political inclinations, and their eyes glaze over like they don't know what I'm talking about sometimes. And I know they know what I'm talking about. I know they do. And that's the thing that bothers me the most, is that they pretend they don't know what that means. Oh, Hillary's great. She's a liberal, blah, blah, blah. Liberal, even though she's basically more of a hawk than even Obama was, with all the drone strikes. And when they feign this ignorance, even that they were very involved in one time or another in these peace protests and stuff. They've heard all this stuff before. I know it because I watch these documentaries. They talk about the same stuff 40, 50 years ago than they do now. Military-industrial complex. The lesser of two evils. George McGovern was the lesser of two evils. That's in War at Home. They were basically saying that. And it's like, when I say these things to them, they don't understand what I mean by that. They think, oh, well, Hillary was really good. I think she would be a good president. It's like, no, you don't. Or at least the version of you 40 or 50 years ago would not say that. And that's what bothers me. And I'm not going to remain silent at their fake naivete approaching these subjects. They're too smart to deny these ideas are real. They just would rather be committed to their egotistical response and not engage with the ideas that they once had. I mean, even acknowledging that they were wrong and just are more conservative politically would be better than feigning ignorance, in my opinion, and pretending not to understand the ideas that I am representing. But this problem isn't only with boomers that I've met or encountered that have these, they sold out and stuff, or whatever you want to. I really don't consider them selling out. They just sold out those particular ideas, but they are in denial about it. It is probably just a culmination of, I think there's this collective amnesia about a lot of these ideas being cyclical, or not cyclical, but these ideas that once were there. It's like this collective amnesia that a lot of the people, the older generation, has about these ideas, and that's what bothers me when I go to these like for example, I'm on YouTube looking at like a Roger Waters interview, and I read the comments. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm sick of. Why is he so political now? Now, it's like it'd be like someone saying, why is Bob Dylan so political now? Or why is Rage Against the Machine talk about politics? I just like the music. I don't want to hear the politics anymore. It's like so fucking stupid. And these people, I'm sure, I'm not saying that all of them, there's a lot of people, you know, that were in that generation that did not go to protests. They just liked rock music, and they were Reagan Democrats or whatever. They went more to the right politically. But it's just this ignorance, this amnesia, and it's like this cognitive dissonance and disconnect from what they were once about. And that's why, you know, when millennials talk about baby boomers, that's what I think that's part of the problem, is that they've become the establishment, but they forgot that they were once anti-establishment. And so when they criticize the politics of Gen Xers or millennials in regards to Sanders or even Jill Stein, I wish they would take a walk in our shoes, or maybe their shoes 40 or 50 years ago, because they were thinking a lot differently. Why not acknowledge that? Why ignore? You know, why ignore that you were once you know what I'm talking about when I mention this stuff. You know exactly what I'm referring to. You know, when I talked about Hillary's speeches with Goldman Sachs, you know what I'm talking about. Well, what's wrong with Goldman Sachs? You know what's wrong with all this stuff. At least you know the arguments against it. Don't pretend. That's what bothers me. It's like, pretend you don't know the arguments against this stuff. It's just so stupid. It's like, if you pretend that you don't know the arguments against it, then that prevents you from arguing against it. From the other side, I mean. So it's a convenient cop-out. And that's a lot of what those people do. These people that have, you know, they become more establishment people. You know, they're different. It's not necessarily conservative. It's more establishment. But that's, you know, they're synonymous. But that's what bothers me. So I think we cannot forget what happened in the 60s and the 70s as far as the counterculture we have. I mean, I'll give you another example of a stupid amnesia that people have, or denial. So let's take the case of Ted Nugent. I read this book about psychedelia. I think it was written in the late 90s. This guy wrote a book about the psychedelic movement in music. And he mentions Ted Nugent being part of the Amboy Dukes and having the pot pipes on the first cover. And Ted Nugent's like, in this like interview that's quoted, "I didn't know what those pipes were for." It's like, ugh. And then Journey to the Center of the Mind has nothing he didn't know that it was about LSD. Fucking bullshit. Okay? That's fucking bullshit. Okay? So just this amnesia needs to stop. We need to you know, acknowledge these ideas and acknowledge that just because you've gone more conservative or soft or more establishment doesn't mean you have any fucking right to criticize people that are anti-establishment now that are younger than you. That's all for this video. I will see you next video.